Whenever you think of college athletes, I'm sure you think of the type of lifestyle shown on the screen. Millions watching you, you're on cloud nine, and there is no better moment. Although that's true, they don't think about the behind the scenes. Throughout this video, I'll go into depth on why the long hours of being a college athlete should result in a paycheck. The average day in the life of a college athlete consists of this. Wake up at 5 a.m., strength and conditioning 6 to 8, 9 to 2 you go to your classes, 3:30 to 6 team practice, 6 to 7 you shower and get whatever treatment you need for your injuries, then eat dinner, study, and do your homework, and then get to bed by 11. Pretty time consuming if you ask me. There are so many arguments against paying college athletes. For example, there are other ways to get into college besides sports so you'll have more free time. That is the most bogus argument I have ever heard. First of all, for a lot of people, especially the athletes shown, sports are the only thing that get them into college when even financial aid isn't enough. And second of all, playing at the college level is a dream to thousands of athletes around the globe, and being part of a team means you'll learn lessons you can't learn anywhere else. Saying that there are other ways to get into college to a hopeful high school athlete is like saying there are other jobs out there to a doctor. Completely generic and unmotivational. Another argument against paying college athletes is that they already receive enough. Considering the athletes on scholarship, all of the attention they get on media day, and throughout their seasons, what else could they possibly want? They want the same opportunity that non-college athletes get to provide. Only 2% of college athletes go on to play professional sports, so a lot of students are trying to think of their future or even just buying some food. Some money would really help them out. The NCAA comes off as God's greatest gift to the sports world, and while they're obviously one of the most relevant organizations, they're abusing their power over these college athletes. They bring in billions of dollars and not a single cent goes back to the athletes. It's no question that college offers you unimaginable experiences that money could never buy, and any athlete I know or read about is forever grateful for that. But they're not so grateful for the NCAA using them to make billions. I've also read in multiple articles that the money is rarely ever used in the student's benefit. How does that make sense? At some point, you're going to have to give back. You really have to pay attention to the bigger picture for this one, but another upside to paying college athletes is to benefit the youth. Kids will see college athletes getting paid and they'll want to be in that position themselves, so youth numbers will rise, and if we're lucky, the obesity in the adolescents will decline. Before we get into legal stuff, I think it's important to add a couple more pros. For instance, college basketball March Madness creates more revenue than the NBA playoffs. NBA players are paid millions and millions, win or lose, but college athletes can't seem to get a couple $1,000s from the multi-billion-dollar industry that is the NCAA. And lastly, we are always seeing the same top 4 teams win the national championship in football, softball, and women's basketball. Maybe paying every college athlete publicly rather than the top prospects under the table would result in a little bit more balance of talent. This is the case regarding the time when part-time coaches started to make full-time salaries and the NCAA wasn't having it. They came up with a new category of coaches called restricted earnings coaches. And these coaches made a maximum of $16,000 per year. The NCAA had ended up losing this case and were given a hard-earned lesson. A little over 20 years later, and the average assistant basketball coach makes over $40,000 a year, whereas assistant football coaches make up to $60,000 a year. Now, given that the time period is very different, I would still say that if this restricted coaches' earnings stayed intact, these assistant or part-time coaches would not be making anything near what they are. When the NCAA lost this case, a jury in Kansas rewarded almost 2,000 part-time college coaches more than $66 million since their salaries were restricted illegally by the NCAA. These coaches have their own lives and families to take care of, but the NCAA will never stop looking for loopholes to take money away from these programs, coaches, and/or players. Goes to show how much of a business this whole world is. In 2019, Trey Johnson, a former defensive back at Villanova, filed a lawsuit against the NCAA involving pay for student athletes. His point was that athletes' hours are tracked in the same way that ticket takers, concession stand workers, etc. are tracked, and those ticket takers and concession stand workers are paid minimum wage, and that is exactly what Johnson is asking that all student athletes are paid. Although I don't think athletes should be paid in the same manner as minimum wage, it was just such a good point made about hours being tracked. How are you going to track these kids' hours and then not pay them? Thankfully, this case has not been closed, so there is still some hope. Around the time that Trey Johnson brought his case to court, the NCAA decided to allow their athletes to profit from their name, image, and likeness so they could make money off of their jersey selling, appear in commercials, and stuff like that. And while this looked like a huge step in the right direction, it really wasn't. Michael J. Wilhelm had this to say concerning this news from the NCAA. The NCAA's recent move to permit student athletes to benefit from their name, image, and likeness illustrates that untenable amateurism model is simply a smokescreen used to protect the pockets of the NCAA and its member schools. That is exactly what it is. The NCAA doesn't care one bit if the athletes get paid, just as long as it's not their money that they're getting. President or politician-wise, Obama has touched on the subject, and he said he thinks if you offer a student a scholarship, that scholarship should stay no matter what, but that is as deep as he went on the topic. Biden hasn't talked about it, but he's in favor of free college for all, so I would imagine he's in favor of it, but who knows? It's not one of the more popular topics in the White House. There are 480,000 college athletes in the NCAA across all 3 levels, and I would intend to pay every single one of them. If you're playing a college sport at any level, you unarguably deserve it. I think $1,000 a semester would be a tremendous help, whether they choose to spend it on food, clothes, etc., or decide to save it for after college. It's $8,000, and that is certainly a good help for your future, especially if you're on scholarship. To solve the issue of some athletes or sports bringing in more than another, the NCAA will begin to allow athletes to make money off of their name, image, or likeness, which is once again being able to appear on commercials, video games, or earning money from your merchandise sold. Whoever deserves the money will certainly get it. As you can see, in 2019, college sports generated over $14 billion. This pie chart is from the 2011-2012 college sports year, but it's more than likely that they use the same or similar percentages with the money produced in 2019. With that being said, I need 7% of that money to go to college athletes across the map, so my plan would be to take all 7% away from the Division I distribution. Give it to the athletes. Obviously, this policy would be implemented on the federal level as it deals with colleges across the country. This was a topic hard to argue in the middle of a pandemic when one of the biggest producers, which is March Madness, was canceled. But I think if you aimed for a 2025 start year to pay college athletes, there would be minimal issues. To wrap this up, here's one more video explaining the situation some college athletes are in and some unfairness is highlighted in the video.
Is it time to pay the college athletes?
Well, it's been time to do that for a long time. I mean, for years and years. I think the issue that we're seeing before us now is one of exploitation of the athlete. And the NCAA will say that they exist to keep the athlete from being exploited. But just look at the relationship that the universities have with these shoe companies, where the shoe companies are paying them 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars to use the players as unpaid billboards. That's what they are. That money is being paid to the universities to put the product on the players, and really for no other reason. So should the players be compensated for that? Absolutely they should be. This is a multi-billion-dollar business, and the players are the only ones that don't have economic rights. Everyone else except the players is allowed their fair market value, and the fact that the players aren't, I think, is a travesty. But that doesn't make, if there were rules broken here, that doesn't make that right. That's still wrong under the current system. But should the current system change? It should have changed decades ago.
Jay Bilas, I've been Max, let me go ahead first. Jay Bilas, I've been on record on many occasions. I'm an unapologetic capitalist, and I believe that everybody, it's not about a player being compensated. It's just that I don't think all players should be compensated the same. If you're starring at Duke, chances are you should get paid more than a player at North Dakota. That's basically me. That's how I think about it. But I wanted to ask you about Zion specifically as it pertains to whatever payment his mother was allegedly received from Nike. Duke is a private institution. There have been people associated with AAUs texting me and talking to me about how he could have been a preferred walk-on, and as a result, might not have accepted the scholarship, which would have made it legit or legal for him or his family to receive something from Nike. I can't imagine that to be the case, but rather than speak about it, I couldn't wait for you to come on to just educate us about what those rules are and what rules would potentially be broken in a situation like this.
Yeah, Stephen A., the NCAA's amateurism rules have no distinction between a player that gets a scholarship and a player that does not. So the idea that you could be a walk-on or a preferred walk-on, which is essentially just a recruited walk-on, and you don't take scholarship money, therefore you can take money in other areas, that's just not so. Every player is the same. Once you're an athlete, you are under the same amateurism restrictions, and that's what they are, restrictions. So the real issue here is, in this specific allegation, did Zion Williamson's mother take money as a consultant for Nike? Now, if she was a legit consultant for Nike, that may completely be legal underneath or under the rules. But to me, it's an easy question. Did Nike pay money as a consultant to Zion Williamson's mother? And then if that's the answer is yes, then that would have to be justified as being a legit service that was provided. Right now, and this has been going on for years, shoe companies have been sponsoring AAU programs, paying money to AAU programs and sponsorship, and then those AAU programs pay out money to coaches, they pay expenses and the like. So there's a lot of money flowing through the system. To me, it's not that hard. The answer, Duke should have this answer really quickly, and I'll give you a reason why. When Zion Williamson blew his shoe out, Nike had people on a plane the next day to get down to Duke to fix the situation. They were on a plane then to China to make sure that he had the proper shoes going forward. They can tell pretty quickly whether a transaction was made and say, here's why the transaction was made, because they have a contractual relationship with Duke. And so this should be easy to clear up. In fact, it should be cleared up by now.
Jay, there's a line from the Bogart movie Casablanca. I'm shocked to discover gambling is going on here. You're winning, sir. Oh, thank you very much. I mean, that's basically my reaction to all this. But you're right, we're a nation of laws, and if a rule is broken, they have to look into it, etc. What it seems to me, and there's been no better expositor of this idea than you. If I were the NCAA, I'd be like, oh my God, we have a Jay Bilas problem. Like, this guy won't stop because you have relentlessly articulated this position so well. But it seems to me that what's especially insidious about the arrangement is not merely that, hey, they have basically low cost or free labor, so they want to continue that system. It's not just about the labor cost. It's about the veneer of amateurism that's important to the NCAA. The reason that they care about cream cheese on a bagel is not just, oh, we don't want to pay the players. They don't want the payers to get paid, period, because part of the allure of the product is the veneer of amateurism. So that seems like an irreconcilable difference here. What can be done about that?
Well, I feel like the justification for amateurism by saying that, well, if we allowed the players to be paid or allowed them to make money off their name and likeness in the marketplace, the product would be less popular to the public and we wouldn't make as much money off the product. That's really a lame justification for not providing the same economic rights to every athlete that every other person has, including every other student. First of all, I don't think that justification stands up. Look, coaches are being paid $5, $6, $7, $8 million now, and nobody's turning away from this. We're playing these Final Four games in a 77,000-seat arena, and nobody's turning away from it. It's a multi-billion-dollar business, and more people are watching than ever. So the idea that if the players were allowed to be paid, people'd stop watching is not only baseless, it's a lie, and they know it's a lie. To me, this comes down to one thing, and that is the administrators know they're not going to cancel sports if the players get paid.